What happens when an undercover CEO watches his own waitress refuse to serve a poor-looking customer, only to uncover a heartbreaking truth that changes everything? The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't the comforting scent. It was the sharp, cold voice of a waitress snapping at a customer. Ethan Reed, CEO of Morning Brew Café, sat quietly near the window, sipping his black coffee. Dressed in casual clothes, faded jeans, and a worn jacket, no one in the bustling cafe recognized him as the owner. That's exactly how he wanted it. Recently, complaints had surfaced about poor service at this location, rude staff, dismissive attitudes, and a cold atmosphere that was driving regulars away. Instead of sending managers to investigate, Ethan decided to see things for himself. The cafe had once been his pride and joy, warm lighting, soft music, and a welcoming vibe that made guests feel like family. But today, Ethan noticed something unsettling. Staff seemed cold and uninterested. Customers stood awkwardly at the counter, waiting too long for service, while employees whispered among themselves, barely making eye contact. It wasn't long before Ethan spotted the real problem: a waitress named Tina. The door jingled as a woman stepped inside. She looked to be in her early 40s, her clothes worn and her shoes scuffed. Her hair was pulled, back loosely, and a weary look clung to her face, the look of someone who had been fighting one battle too many. She walked carefully to the counter, digging in her purse for coins. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Could I just get a small coffee?" Tina, who stood behind the counter scrolling through her phone, barely glanced up. "That's $2.50, she said flatly. I think I'm a little short," the woman said, voice breaking. "Could I maybe get a small cup for what I have?" Tina scoffed. "If you can't pay, you can't stay." "Please," the woman whispered. "I just need something warm." "I said no," Tina snapped. "This isn't a shelter." The cafe grew quiet as eyes turned toward the exchange. The woman's face reddened with embarrassment as she clutched her purse and turned to leave. "Wait!" Ethan called out, setting down his cup. He quickly approached the woman. "Here," he said, gently placing a $5 bill on the counter. "Her coffee's on me, and get her something fresh." Tina snorted. "Why waste your money on someone like that?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "I didn't ask for your opinion. Just make the coffee." The woman looked at Ethan, her eyes glassy with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's nothing." Ethan smiled softly. "Please, sit down. I'll bring it to you." Minutes later, Ethan found the woman seated in the corner, clutching the warm cup tightly. He placed a fresh muffin on the table beside her. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "I know," Ethan replied. "But I wanted to." Her name was Karen, and as they spoke, her story unfolded. Karen had recently lost her job at a local warehouse after it closed down. Her savings had dried up, and her landlord had given her 2 weeks to leave her apartment. "I'm just trying to get through the day," she admitted, voice breaking. "I never thought I'd end up like this." "You're not alone," Ethan said kindly. "Everyone struggles sometimes." Karen smiled weakly. "It's nice to know some people still care." As Karen quietly sipped her coffee, Ethan approached Tina at the counter. "We need to talk," he said firmly. "Oh, about what?" Tina sneered. "How I stopped some freeloader from hanging around." "That freeloader is a person," Ethan shot back. "And this cafe, it's supposed to treat everyone like they matter." "Yeah? And what if some people don't matter?" Tina smirked. "This is a business, not a charity." Ethan's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "You're right. This is a business. My business." Tina's face froze. Wait. You're the—" "Ethan Reed," he confirmed. "Owner of Morning Brew Café. And the man who just watched you treat someone like they didn't belong," Tina stammered. I didn't know." That's the problem, Ethan interrupted. You didn't bother to care. Please, Tina pleaded, her attitude suddenly changing. I didn't mean… Save it, Ethan cut in. You're done here. Later that afternoon, Ethan sat with Karen once more. I'd like to help you, Ethan said. Not just with coffee, with work. You're offering me a job? Karen asked, stunned. I need someone who understands people, Ethan explained. Someone who knows what kindness really looks like. Karen's eyes widened. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Ethan smiled. For the first time that day, Karen's face lit up with hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'd love that. The morning after Karen accepted the job, she stood nervously outside Morning Brew Café, clutching her old winter coat tightly. Her breath curled in the cold air as she debated stepping inside. You can do this, she whispered to herself. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Inside, the morning rush was in full swing. Baristas moved briskly. Customers crowded the counter, and the familiar hum of conversation filled the air. Karen's heart pounded as she spotted Ethan by the espresso machine. He glanced up and smiled warmly. Glad you're here, he said. Ready to jump in? I think so, Karen replied, her voice unsure. You'll do fine, Ethan reassured her. Let's start simple, greeting customers and serving pastries. Karen tied on her apron and stepped behind the counter. Moments later, a man approached, speaking quickly. Large dark roast and a blueberry muffin, please. Sure, Karen said with a nervous smile, fumbling with the register. The man tapped his fingers impatiently as Karen struggled with the buttons. Here, Ethan said quietly, stepping beside her. I'll walk you through it. With Ethan's calm guidance, Karen completed the order. The customer gave her a small nod as he left. No frustration, no rude comment. Just a simple, thank you. It wasn't perfect, but Karen felt a small sense of victory. Despite her early progress, Karen faced skepticism from some of the staff, especially Rachel, one of the senior baristas. So what? Rachel muttered to a co-worker one afternoon. She gets a job here just because Ethan felt bad for her. Karen overheard the remark but stayed quiet. Deep down, part of her wondered if Rachel was right. Later that day, Karen confided in Ethan. I don't think I'm cut out for this, she admitted. I'm too slow, and I don't belong here. You're doing better than you think, Ethan said firmly. But you can't let people like Rachel decide your worth. You've got this, trust me. Determined to prove herself, Karen started coming in early and staying late. She memorized the menu, learned how to steam milk properly, and practiced latte art when the cafe was quiet. One evening, as Rachel prepared to leave, she noticed Karen quietly scrubbing the tables, wiping down every chair, even adjusting the sugar containers. You don't have to do all that, Rachel muttered. That's the closer's job. I know, Karen said softly. But I want people to feel welcome when they walk in. Rachel said nothing, but her expression softened. 1 week later, Ethan stepped back to let Karen manage her first busy morning solo. Lines stretched to the door and the cafe buzzed with energy. Karen's hands trembled as she worked the register, but she stayed calm, remembering Ethan's advice. Good morning, she greeted warmly. What can I get for you today? 1 by 1. Karen handled the rush. She remembered names, smiled at guests, and even joked with a few regulars. Rachel watched from the espresso machine, surprised by how smoothly Karen kept things running. After the last customer walked out, Rachel approached her. Hey, she said quietly. You did good today. Karen smiled. Thanks. That afternoon, the cafe's door jingled, and in walked Tina, the waitress Ethan had fired. Her eyes flicked around the cafe before landing on Karen at the counter. You, Tina sneered. Guess begging worked out for you. Karen's chest tightened. I'm just doing my job, she said evenly. Yeah? Tina smirked. We'll see how long that lasts. Before Karen could respond, Ethan stepped forward. I think you should leave, Tina. Whatever, Tina muttered, rolling her eyes as she walked out. Karen swallowed hard, still rattled. I should have said something. You did the right thing, Ethan assured her. You kept your cool, and that's what matters. Inspired by Karen's resilience, Ethan started working closely with his team to rebuild the cafe's culture. He held weekly staff meetings to encourage open communication. Employees brainstormed new ideas, like offering free coffee refills for seniors and adding a pay it forward board where customers could leave prepaid drink cards for those in need. One morning, Karen arrived early and found Rachel pinning a note to the board. Curious, she peeked at the message. For anyone having a hard day, I've been there too. Enjoy this one on me. Rachel. Karen smiled, realizing that kindness had started to spread. Weeks later, Karen stood behind the counter. As a familiar figure walked in, Linda, the woman who had once been turned away. Linda smiled shyly, her clothes a little brighter and her face more at ease. Karen? Linda said softly. I just wanted to say thank you. Last time I was here, well, you know. But because of you and Ethan, things are better now. Karen smiled, warmly. I'm glad you came back. She handed Linda a fresh cup of coffee. This time, no coins counted, no hesitation. Just warmth and kindness. As Linda took her first sip, Karen felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. The warm morning light streamed through the cafe windows as Karen carefully wiped down the counter. For weeks, she'd been slowly finding her rhythm, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of purpose. But Karen knew her journey wasn't over yet. Despite the progress she'd made, she still struggled to shake her insecurities. And now, her biggest challenge yet was about to unfold. Karen, Ethan called from his office. Can you come in here for a minute? Karen wiped her hands on her apron and stepped inside. Everything okay? Better than okay, Ethan grinned. We've just landed a huge catering order, 100 guests for a community fundraiser tomorrow. That's great, Karen said, then paused. Wait, what does that have to do with me? I want you to manage it, Ethan said. From preparation to delivery. Karen's stomach tightened. Me? Are you sure? Positive, Ethan replied. You've proven you can handle pressure. I trust you. Karen swallowed her nerves. Okay, I'll do it. The next morning, Karen arrived early to prepare. She organized her team, set up coffee stations, and arranged trays of pastries and sandwiches. For a while, things went smoothly, until trouble hit. Karen, Rachel called from the kitchen. We're out of croissants, and the order requested 3 dozen. Karen's heart sank. We had them this morning. I think one of the baristas accidentally sold them, Rachel said. We're out. Panic flared inside Karen. She took a breath, reminding herself of Ethan's advice. Stay calm. Focus on solutions. Okay, Karen said firmly. We'll improvise. Add muffins and scones to the trays. They're just as good. And I'll add a few extra pastries as an apology. Rachel blinked, in surprise. That actually sounds like a good idea. Thanks, Karen said, her confidence building. Now let's make this happen. The fundraiser turned out to be a huge success. Guests praised the cafe's food, and Karen's decision to add extra pastries won over several customers. This is fantastic, one guest said. I'll definitely be visiting Morning Brew soon. When Karen returned to the cafe later that afternoon, Ethan greeted her with a smile. I heard everything went well, he said. Nice work. I almost panicked, Karen admitted. But I figured it out. I knew you would, Ethan said proudly. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. The next day, Tina walked back into the cafe. Karen tensed, remembering their last encounter. Look, Tina said awkwardly. I'm not good at this kind of thing, but she shifted uncomfortably. I shouldn't have said those things before. You're doing all right here. Karen blinked in surprise. Thanks, she said softly. That means a lot. Don't let it go to your head, Tina muttered, smirking. But seriously, good job. As Tina walked out, Karen couldn't help but smile. That evening, as Karen closed up the cafe, she paused at the Pay It Forward board. Smiling, she wrote her own note. For anyone who's doubting themselves, you're stronger than you think. Karen. Stepping back, Karen realized something. She wasn't just someone who had been saved. She was someone making a difference. And this time, she believed she belonged. Weeks after the fundraiser's success, Morning Brew Café was busier than ever. Customers filled the tables each morning, and the once cold atmosphere had been replaced by warm smiles and friendly chatter. Karen had grown more confident in her role, and employees now greeted her with respect, even Rachel. But Karen's journey wasn't over. One final challenge would test everything she'd learned. One chilly afternoon, Ethan walked into the cafe with a serious look on his face. Karen, he said, I need you to handle something important. What's wrong? Karen asked. The corporate office is sending someone to evaluate this location tomorrow, Ethan explained. We need to show them that Morning Brew isn't just back on track. It's better than ever. Karen felt her nerves spike. You want me to handle that? Absolutely, Ethan smiled. No one knows this place better than you now. Okay, Karen said, mustering her courage. I won't let you down. That evening, Karen stayed late, determined to make everything perfect. She reorganized the pastry display, checked the espresso machine twice, and ensured the tables were spotless. Rachel noticed Karen working alone and approached her. Need some help? Karen hesitated. I don't want to drag you into this. Hey, Rachel smiled. We're a team now, and teams stick together. Grateful, Karen accepted the offer. Together, they polished the cafe until everything gleamed. The following morning, a sharp-dressed woman named Ms. Jennings arrived, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. Karen greeted her warmly. Welcome to Morning Brew. Can I get you something to drink while you look around? Just coffee, Ms. Jennings said flatly. No distractions. Karen's heart pounded as Ms. Jennings inspected everything, checking the counters, watching employees, and quietly writing notes. The cafe staff moved quickly but calmly, following the new systems Karen had helped create. Finally, Ms. Jennings reached the Pay It Forward board and paused. Her gaze lingered on Karen's note. For anyone who's doubting themselves, you're stronger than you think. Karen, did you write this? Ms. Jennings asked. I did, Karen answered. It's something I've had to remind myself a lot. To Karen's surprise, Ms. Jennings smiled. I like it, she said softly. Later that afternoon, Ethan returned to the cafe, anxious for news. Well, he asked Karen, how'd it go? I think, okay, Karen said. She didn't say much. Moments later, Ms. Jennings returned. Mr. Reed, she said, I'll be filing my report tonight, but I'll tell you this now. Whatever you're doing here, it's working. That's great to hear, Ethan grinned. Karen's been leading the charge. I could tell, Ms. Jennings said. And that note on the board, it's clear this place isn't just about coffee anymore. It's about people. Turning to Karen, she added, keep it up. You're making a difference. Karen's eyes shone with pride. Thank you. That evening, as Karen tidied the cafe, a familiar face walked in, Linda, the woman Karen once helped. This time, Linda looked healthier, brighter, and more confident. I just wanted to say thank you, Linda said, smiling. I found a job last month. Things are finally getting better. I'm so happy to hear that, Karen said warmly. I couldn't have done it without you, Linda added. You reminded me that people still care. Karen smiled softly. I think we reminded each other. A week later, Ethan gathered the cafe staff for a meeting. "I want to thank you all for what we've built here," he began. "This cafe is thriving again, not because of one person, but because of all of you." He paused, then turned to Karen. "But I do want to recognize someone special, someone who proved that second chances can change everything." Ethan presented Karen with a small box. Inside was a shiny name badge that read, "Karen, Assistant Manager." "Me?" Karen gasped. You sure? You've earned it," Ethan said. "You believed in this place and in yourself. Now it's time you believed in what you can achieve." Fighting back tears, Karen pinned the badge on her apron. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Ethan smiled. As the cafe filled with applause, Karen stood tall. Not as someone who once felt forgotten, but as someone who had finally found her place. If this story moved you, remember, a simple act of kindness can change someone's entire path. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.